than 3 weeks away from the August primary election in Missouri. One of the big races on the ballot, of course, is for Missouri governor. All the Republican candidates are listed there on your screen. And according to recent polls from Emerson College and Remington Research Group, Mike Kehoe, Jay Ashcroft, and Bill Eigel are the front runners. Joining me here in studio, one of those candidates, Missouri State Senator Bill Eigel. Bill, thank you so much for being here. Yeah. Let's start with what happened over the weekend and the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. Since that happened, there has been calls, bipartisan calls, to cool down the temperature of politics in America. So explain why a political ad that is being run in support of you using a flamethrower and burning boxes, one that says President Biden, why is that a good thing?
Well, we're talking about the agenda that is actually going to help us do a better job protecting our communities, protecting each other. I mean, what we learned from this weekend and really that horrific attack where even though President Donald J. Trump survived, someone was killed, several people were injured, is that we're not doing a good job protecting one another. We're not doing a good job protecting our community. So the platform of ideas that I'm running on are all things that are going to help us do a better job protecting the citizens of the state of Missouri. I'm the guy that's defining the role of government as protecting our rights, and every policy position I've taken, which is shown in those ads that you talk about, are about protecting Missouri. We're going to protect the taxpayer of Missouri by being the only candidate that wants to get rid of personal property tax so that you don't have to pay rent on your car every December 1st. I'm going to be the candidate that's talking about protecting our communities from the illegal immigration invasion that Joe Biden has precipitated for the past 4 years. We are going to detain and deport every single illegal in the state. And, you know, my opponent, Mike Kehoe, came out and said that he opposes that idea. I guess that means he's for amnesty in this state. My plank includes protecting our farmland from being bought out by foreign entities. You know, my opponent, Mike Kehoe, was the guy that was actually voting to allow our farmland to be sold over the idea. So we're not going to stop talking about our ideas just because the people that oppose it in the first place want us to be silent.
Yeah, but we're going to talk more about those issues. But going back to the point that I just made, even your party's leader, former President Donald Trump, has said that he is going to make changes to his RNC speech in order to promote unity. So how does your ad promote unity in Missouri?
Listen, I'm all for unity. I think the president has got this message right, but what's going to unify us, and the president has said this as well, is the ideas that we share in common. The ideas that we have as part of the planks in the GOP platform, I think are not just going to make for a stronger America, they're going to make for a stronger Missouri. And everything that I just mentioned, everything that's talked about in those ads are part of the plank of ideas that are going to unify the Republican Party and other folks in this state. I mean, when I talk about getting rid of personal property tax, that's not just good for Republicans, it's good for independents and even Democrats as well. So really think about it in the context of the ideas are what's going to bring us together and what are going to pave the way for the future Missouri that I'm talking about, where we're going to be a leader in these United States.
You talked about foreign land ownership, which has really become a hot topic among the GOP candidates for governor in this race. Recently, you have supported legislation that bans foreign entities from owning land and real estate in Missouri in the future, but you have not supported legislation that requires foreign entities, including China, from selling off land that they already own. Why?
Well, actually, I don't know that that's accurate. I did have legislation that I got passed out of the Senate this year that would actually ban future sales, like you just said, but I also sponsored a constitutional amendment that, if approved by the voters, would actually require any foreign owners to sell or transfer land back to American hands within 2 years. So I've actually been the leader on this issue. I'm the only one of the three major candidates talking about not just stopping this from happening again because of the vote Mike Kehoe took back in 2013, but we want to follow the lead of states like Arkansas and actually get control of the land that we've lost. I think Missouri ought to be owned by Missourians, or at least Americans.
I'm talking about an amendment in 2019. You voted no against that amendment that required any alien or foreign business owning agricultural land to transfer all interests in such land to non-alien or non-foreign businesses within 3 months. You voted against that.
Well, that's because if you try to do that through the state code, it will be declared unconstitutional because it would violate the Constitution. That's why I'm proposing a constitutional amendment. I'm all for the policy that's going to get our land back, but we also have to do it the right way. The Constitution's very clear about this, so I am the only one talking about submitting a constitutional amendment to the people of this state so that we would actually get control of that land back. So I've been the leader on this issue. Mike Kehoe's been wrong on this issue. Jay Ashcroft, the secretary, has been wrong on this issue. I want to see a Missouri where not one single square inch of our land is sold or owned by any foreign entity.
You're pro-life, and abortion is a big topic within this race and within the country right now. It's a topic of conversation. Do you agree with the current law in Missouri, this total ban except for when the mother's health or life is in jeopardy. Do you agree with that?
I do. I voted for it. I'm the only one of the three major candidates that voted for it, so I stand by that vote. And I'll tell you what else. I have been always pro-life, and I've always opposed abortion, because not just do I believe this is about the sanctity of life, but if you look at abortion, abortion harms women. Abortion, if you look at women who have undergone an abortion procedure, they have much higher rates of suicide. They have much higher rates of mental health issues. Women are being harmed by the scourge of abortion. And I grew up in a time where it was expected that the men of our communities would go out of the way to protect women in our society. So consider me old-fashioned, but that's what we're going to continue to do.
Most likely in November, there's going to be a referendum on the November ballot to enshrine the right to an abortion up until fetal viability. If the voters pass that measure in November, what will you do to ensure that the voice of the voter is carried out?
Well, I'm always going to be pro-life, and I happen to think that it's not going to pass. I mean, Missouri has been a very pro-life state, and for the past 2 decades has sent some of the biggest pro-life supermajorities of Republicans down to Jefferson City to actually speak on their behalf. So I can tell you that the first thing I'm going to do on August 7th is I'm going to unite the Republican Party by bringing them together in defense of probably one of the biggest Republican priorities of the past 2 decades. We're going to continue to be pro-life. I'm always going to be pro-life because, again, not only is that do I see that as the destruction of life, I see this as a way that we're going to protect the women in our communities.
A lot of families in Missouri who have used IVF are concerned about the future of IVF. Be very specific where you stand on that issue.
So I think that there's ways where you can provide dignity for the life that you're creating through IVF treatments and still not allow for the destruction of a lot of these cells. There's ways we can do that where we can have both things. You can have an IVR, but you can have that available to couples, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be destroying life like we're seeing in, quite frankly, some states that have already outlawed this. So we're going to continue to defend both of those, and we're going to be bold about that.
Immigration, another big issue, and you have said that if you were elected, you would round up undocumented immigrants, workers, and send them back to Mexico. How exactly would you do that?
Sure.
How much would it cost? Who's going to pay for that? And what specific examples do you have of undocumented immigrants committing crimes in the state of Missouri?
Well, I think we've seen illegal immigrants commit several crimes just in recent history here in the city of St. Louis. And right now, we're estimated to have more than 70,000 illegal immigrants in the state. To put that in perspective, the cost of those illegal immigrants, as it puts on our healthcare system, on our school system, is more than we pay in personal property tax. So when I'm talking about getting rid of personal property tax, keep in mind the cost of these illegals is actually higher than that. So what I'm going to do specifically is I'm going to declare under Article 4 of the Missouri Constitution an invasion of this state, which will empower the National Guard, the Highway Patrol, and every sheriff in every county of the state to detain individuals suspected of being here illegally, and we're going to return them to the nearest point of entry. The budget right now of the Highway Patrol is about $250 million. The budget of the National Guard is less than $100 million. We have a $53 billion budget that seems to get bigger even with some of the status quo Republicans that we have down in Jefferson City. So there's nothing that would convince me that we don't have the resources to provide additional law enforcement, or that we wouldn't be able to transport these individuals out of the borders of this state or to the nearest port of entry. What we're lacking is a leader that's willing to lead on this issue. Unfortunately, Mike Kehoe and Mike Parson have been vacant on this issue. They've been absent. And as they've been absent, you know, the route that illegals are taking to get into the state of Missouri right now is the same route through our soft on crime regimes in St. Louis City and Kansas City that are being used by the fentanyl trade. It's being used by the human trafficking trade. So the absence of leadership in Jefferson City is hurting our state in a number of ways. Illegal immigration is something that the executive in particular can be very proactive about.
I want to talk about some tax issues. You want to eliminate personal and corporate income taxes, and as you have mentioned, the personal property tax. As we know, eliminating billions of dollars in revenue. Your critics say that essentially, if this were to go through, that you would be defunding local and police, local fire and police departments. How are you going to pay for these state services that so many people rely on as you cut billions in dollars of revenue by getting rid of those?
Well, first of all, I think we need to understand 29 other states have already gotten rid of personal property tax. Under an Eigel administration, we would be the 30th state. And the value of every personal property tax bill paid by every citizen in every county of the state is really only about $1.7 billion. To put that in perspective, we've increased spending down in Jefferson City over the past 5 years by $25 billion. So I'm going to go in there and be the actual fiscal conservative that a lot of the soft Republicans promise to be in campaign season, but never actually follow through on once they're in office. And once we save a little bit of money by cutting into that wasteful, bloated budget, I mean, we had more than $2 billion in wasteful earmarks in this year's budget alone. We're going to be able to afford things like getting rid of personal property tax while keeping the local areas home, getting rid of income taxes so that we can join the Texas and the Tennessees and the Floridas who have already figured out that the conversation in particular about personal property tax is not a conversation about whether or not we can and should fund those local services that most every rational human being thinks that we ought to have, like police, fire, and schools. It is a conversation about whether or not charging our middle and working income class households rent for the crime of owning a car every December 1st is the right way to go about it. I know that the answer to that question is no. We're going to lower the tax burden in this state.
Real quick, when we talk about the gas tax, you know, a lot of people would tell you that the roads in Missouri, the bridges in Missouri, they're not good. But in 2018, you sponsored legislation in order to raise the fuel tax, the gas tax. Is that something that you still stand for in order to improve roads and bridges?
Well, the bill that you're referring to had, I think, a half a point off of the income tax. So overall, that was an enormous tax cut for the people of this state. So I know my opponents are out there trying to say that I'm a supporter of raising taxes. I've never supported raising a tax in my life. Tax Hike Mike, or Mike Kehoe as like we like to call him, has been a steady advocate of increasing not just the gas tax, but many. We need to lower the tax burden in this state. Personal property tax, income taxes, and quite frankly, when it comes to our roads, to tell you just how inefficient government is, we are spending more than twice what we were back in 2000, adjusted for inflation, on every mile of roadway we have in the state. And as you mentioned, there's a lot of folks not happy with the outcomes. There's a real confusion in government that thinks that more money into government produces better outcomes. That's just not the case. More money into government just produces more inefficient outcomes. So I'm going to be the guy that's going to be the fiscal conservative. We're going to lower the tax burden in this state. In spite of what my opponents are lying about me on television and text message, I've never supported higher taxes. We're going to cut the tax burden.
Have you gotten a Trump endorsement yet?
We're working on it. I tell you, every day I think that, you know, I was the first person to endorse Donald J. Trump. I'm an elector for Donald J. Trump in the Electoral College. I'm the same disruptor for Jefferson City that Donald Trump is for the biggest swamp in the country, Washington, D.C. And if he's going to get more involved in the state of Missouri, we'd love to have his endorsement.
All right, Senator Bill Eigel, thank you so much. Appreciate it. We'll be right back.